Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial, and in this one I'll be showing you how to keep track of the pages you visit in your Django application. And to achieve this, I'll be using the content type framework already installed in your Django application. So what I simply mean by keeping track of the pages you visit is whenever I visit a page, like in most applications online, if I visit this, I get to see it in my history page, so to keep track of all the pages I've visited. So this could be useful for the user to have access to the previous pages he or she has visited, and also to the admin to have a history of what the pages a user have visited in order to create systems like the recommendation systems using machine learning and so on and so forth. So enough talk. I already have a simple application with two apps, the blog and the product apps. So I also have the history app, but it's currently empty. This is just dummy data. We'll populate this with actual data as we progress in our application. So let's head over to Visual Studio Code and create a model for this. So the model we're going to be creating is going to rely on the content type framework, like I mentioned. And if you check your settings.py, you could see the content type. You can see django.contrib.content is already installed in your Django application. So we'll be using some of the functionalities of this to actually create a simple app. So the first things first, I'll import the content type model. This is the main model in the content type app. Then the next thing I'll import would be the generic foreign key. I'll explain what this does as we progress. So let's create a simple Django model. We're going to name it history. The first field we're going to have is the content type field. It's going to be a foreign key. On delete, we'll set it to null. Null equals to true. I'll explain what this does as we progress. So the next thing is the object ID. What's the positive integer field? Then the one next is the content object, and this is going to be of type generic foreign key. So back to the declaration. The content type is going to be the actual type we would work with. So the examples of stuffs we could actually, let me hide this, of stuffs we could actually get from it would be, are you talking about the products or the post? So what this simply means, if I come to my application, so the content type could either be a post model like this or of product type, and these are based on the declaration of my model. So in my blog application, you can see the model here is post, so that would be the content type. No, it's going to be based name based on the application name. So it could be of type blog, would verify that, or of type products. So the next one is the ID. So if I view an individual object just like this, this is an object. I'll be using the class-based view. So this is a particular object and it has an ID of 1. So over here, the kind of values I'll be expecting will be either 1, 2, 3. You get the idea. And it's a positive integer field because we can't have a negative primary key, just something like a primary key of -12 or -10. Then the content object is the actual object. So for this now, it's going to return every single data in this bookshelf as the object. So one thing about the generic foreign key, if you go to the declaration over here, or before that, let me explain. The difference between a generic foreign key and a foreign key is that a foreign key has a one-to-one relationship between a model and another model. So it can point to only one model, just like this foreign key over here pointing to the content type model. But with a generic foreign key, I could either point to the post model or the product model, because for instance, if we go to our application here, I would want to store the object of a product object, and I'll also want to store a post object. You get the idea. So if you have other pages, you could have a newsletter object, an email object, and so on and so forth. So with generic foreign key, we can be able to store models of different types. You get the idea. So as we progress, you see what I actually mean by this. So by default, let's go over here to the generic foreign key. By default, it asks for the content type and the object ID. So if we actually name the previous fields by this exact name, content type and object ID, like we've done here, there wouldn't be any need for us to pass it over here. So normally I could pass content type and object ID here, but if you give it this exact names, there wouldn't be any need to pass it. So the next thing is, let's just return self.content object. Then this is a simple history model, and we could also add the user that actually viewed it and the time he or she viewed it. So to do that, let me just quickly import the settings. User model. So we could simply just put the user over here. Oops. So it's going to be a foreign key. Then undelete models dot cascade. Yep. Then the next thing and final thing I would also want would be viewed on, like the time he or she viewed the page. So viewed on, and it's going to be a date time field. Okay, so let's go over and make migrations. Then we migrate. Once again, let's run the server and check if everything is working. So everything seems to be working. So yeah, and one thing to point about the content type model, like I earlier mentioned, so this is our application. You can see the content type application keeps track of the apps in your Django projects and also the models in those individual apps, and we'll be seeing how to utilize this to achieve what we want to achieve in this project. So now this is done, the next thing would be to go to our admin.py and add the model we just created to the admin. So we have the histories. One thing, let me just go and update this, the plural form. I did not add that to have a nice updated histories. So the next thing to do would be, so now we have our model that keeps track of the pages a user viewed in our Django application. The next thing would be to actually create a signal. So whenever I visit an individual page just like this, a signal will be sent. So let's create a simple signal in our history application. So create a signal .py file, and over here we'll import from Django dispatch import signal. So create a simple signal. What are we going to name it? Page viewed. Okay. Object, because I'm using a class-based view. So let me just name it object viewed signal. The providing argument would be instance, that's a particular instance of the object, and also the requests. I think we need those two. So this is the signal, and okay, so after creating the signal, we need a particular place where we could actually send this signal. So whenever I visit this object, for instance, the signal will be sent that I have currently viewed this page. So to do that, I'll create a mixin for that in our history app. I could, if I don't want to create a mixin, I could just easily individually do them in the function-based view, but I'll be creating a simple mixin that actually sends this signal. So I'll create a new file called mixins.py. From the page, object viewed, object view mixin. And since we're working with generic class-based views, we could simply just override the dispatch method and do whatever we want to do in the dispatch method. So object view mixin. So yeah, let's do this. So the thing we want to achieve here is to see if this page actually is an object. So if I view the page from my code, this is a particular object, while if I'm viewing something like this, this is a query set. You get the idea. Everything here is a query set. When I click on one, this is an object. So this is the value or the object, the information we want to actually store in our database. So if I head over here, I could just simply create a variable called instance and say self.getObject. And the reason why we have access to this is because this object view mixin will be added in a class-based views. So try, if this has an object, then you would equate it to instance. If it doesn't, so we'll say self.model does not exist. Is there an S does not exist? Then we'll say instance is equals to none. Then if we have the instance, the next thing would be to just say if instance is not none, then we can simply send the signal. So let me head over here and import the signal. So the signal we just created, object viewed signal. So if the instance, that means if it is a particular object we are viewing, you send a signal. So we'll say object view signal dot send. Then we'll pass it the sender, and we can get the sender from the instance. And remember, the instance is an object, so we could say sender dot class. Yeah. Then the next argument would be instance, which is equals to instance, the current instance. Then the final argument is request, which is equals to request. And where we actually got this instance and request is from the signal.py, because we said the providing arguments should be instance and request. So we are passing it from here, instance and request. So one other thing to do would be, let me see. We only want to keep track of the history of authenticated users. That is our users, registered users. So we could also add that condition here. So if request dot user dot is authenticated, yeah. So if the user is currently logged in and the instance is not none, send the signal. So this is cool, object view mixin. So after creating this mixin, we could simply just add it. So let me just copy this mixin and go to our two apps. We have the blog app. So I would head over to the view.py, and you can see it's a very simple view. So the list view returns a query set, while the detail view returns an object. So for something like this, this would work. So we have the object viewed mixin, and we also import it. So from history.mixins, import the object view mixin, then we'll pass it here. So since this is the post detail extends the detail view, so we'll have access to the dispatch method which we declared here. So if you know how class-based views work, you understand what I'm actually doing. I did a previous course on that, so you could check that in my YouTube channel. So the next thing to do after this would be to also pass it to, because we have two apps, so also pass it to the product app. So head over to the views.py and pass it. So from history.mixins, so let's check if our code is actually breaking. Let's refresh this. It's actually working. Let's check this. So our code is not breaking. So the next question you'd ask is, okay, yeah, I've visited the page, I've sent the mixin, so what next? And the next thing to do would be to actually create a receiver for the mixin. So we'll head over to our history model and create a receiver for that. So first things first, let me import the signal I created. So import the object viewed signal. So the next thing will be to create the receiver, because whenever I view a page, I'm sending the signal. So this is where I implement what I need to do with the signal. So we'll call it object viewed receiver, and I'm gonna have the sender, the instance, the request, and what next? Sender, instance, request, the args if there is, and the keyword args arguments. So what do I want to do when I receive the signal? And it's simple. I want to create a new history. So whenever I visit this page, a new history would be created. So Let's head over to this new history. Is that name okay? Whichever way. Okay, so new history would be history objects that's create. So what do we want to create? First thing, the user. So the user so could get that request that's user. The next one is the content type. Content type. So the content type is, to get the content type, we'll just simply make use of the content type model. So content type dot object dot get for model, and we'll pass in the instance. So the content type model has a manager, and this manager has this function inside, get for model. So we pass it the class and it gives us the model. So over here we're going to get the class from the instance. Yeah. So let me cross check. No, we're going to get the class from the sender, because when we sent it over here, the sender could either be of type product or of type blog. So we have the sender, then the next thing to do would be the content ID, which is equals to the instance dot ID. Then the final one, okay, we don't need to pass any other one because the content object will be generated based on the content type and the object ID. So this should be cool. So the next thing would be to actually connect this receiver to the signal. So object viewed receiver dot connect. We'll pass in this receiver we just created. Being lazy to type. This could have been faster if I just typed it. So yeah. So what simply just happened is whenever I receive the signal, I would create a new history. Then I'm just connecting the signal over here. So let's see if this is actually working. So let me refresh this page. Oops, the application broke. So let's see. Function object has no attributes connect. I'm supposed to do object viewed signal connect. I'm supposed to connect the signal to the receiver. That was a simple mistake I made over here. Okay, content ID has invalid keyword argument for this function. Let's check over here first of all if any history has been created. Okay, no. So let's work on this. Content ID is an invalid keyword argument for this function. Okay, typo. It's object ID. Object ID over here. Object ID. That was a typo by me. So, yep, let's see. So this is a particular object. So let's go over and refresh the histories model and see. Wow, this actually worked. So you have the bookshelf, and you can see the bookshelf over here. Okay. I have to return a string. So this is an object. So we could format this to be better, but let me just put something fast. Content type. Let's see. It needs a string. Okay, so this is the history we viewed. So if we head back to history, so currently you can see this is a product. I could easily format this to something better, but you guys can put something you could easily understand. So let me head over here to blog and see. So let me refresh. So this is a post. So you can see because of the generic foreign key, we can have access to something like this. So we can see our history is being stored. I could do something better. Let me just format this with something better. So this is something better. So we have the object and the time the user viewed. So this is it. So you can see the 2 pages I visited. So that's just the idea of this. So we can see our history is currently working because we visited 2 pages and you can see 2 histories. If I visit more, it's at them. So the next thing I would want to do would be to make this history page reflect the history of the current user. So let's head over to the, first of all, let me clear all this. So let's head over to the views.py of the history. So currently we've representing the page using the template view. So I'll just change it to the list view, then override the get query sets function. Okay, so user history would be equals to, let me import the model. So from dot models, so history dot object dot filter, where the user is equals to so we're going to filter. So whenever I come user views this page, it's going to be seeing the history based on the current logged in user. So this is just a simple filter. You can see filter where the user is equals to self.request.user. So over here we return the user history. So as simple as that. So we already have the template here called history list. So the next thing to do would be to create a for loop. So for history and history list, copy this particular row. So history dot what's the first field? Do I remember that? Okay. History dot content object Okay, then so that is that. Let me refresh. So we can see the history of the current user. So you can see he has viewed the bookshelf, and this is the time. Then this is currently working. Then the next thing I would do would be to implement the delete button. So let's head over to the views.py and create the view for the delete. So I would be using the mixing, single object mixing. So I'll get that django.views.generic.details, import single object mixing. So over here I'll name it history or remove history, whichever one, history delete, and it's gonna extend the single object mixing and the view. So I think I don't need this template view again, so I'll remove it and just import the view, not Vue.js. So yeah, so we have access to the single object mixing. So the next thing I'll do would be to have the get method. I think I have a shortcut for this. Oops, no shortcuts. Okay, so we have the get method. Okay, so we want to actually, whenever we click on this, it deletes that particular history. So now we have the get method and the single object mixing. We could simply get the objects. So we could say self.get object, since this is a detail view. So we have the object now. So we say obj.delete. Just to do cross check. So if obj is not none, just simple error checking. So after this, we just return a redirect to the same page, and the name of the page is, I would have to confirm that, history. Okay, the name of the page is history. So redirect back to history. Then I also have to import the redirect shortcut. So redirect. So that is it for this. So let's check if this actually works. But before then, we have to add the URL in our URLs file. So go over here and I think it puts it for us. So put delete. So I think history delete, yeah, so this is good to go. So in our history list, we just pass it the function of history, the name of history delete. We also pass it the primary key, history.pk. So let's history delete is silly mistake. I come over here and equals to history. So that's okay. Wow, voila, it's working. So let's just add more history. I know you are thinking this was real. Fake. So let's head over to history. So you can see I could easily manage my history from this. And if we check over here, it's updates. So this is just a simple way to actually keep track of your history in your application. So on the user end side, this could be good for going back to previous pages you visited, while on the administrator side, this kind of data could be used to create recommender system using machine learning and stuffs like that. So thank you very much for watching. I hope I covered most of the parts that you've been needing. And the new stuff to just keep note of is the content type framework. You could check the Django documentation for how to use this in depth. So thank you for watching.